What's going on, everyone? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with ScoopDuck on 3, coming to you on Sunday, November 3rd, 2024, as number one Oregon defeats the Michigan Wolverines 38-17 on the road in Ann Arbor at the Big House. And we are going to break down all of our thoughts on that game. And joining me to break it all down is ScoopDuck owner and publisher Justin Hopkins. J-Hop, how are we doing?
We're good. It's Sunday. The Ducks won. Everything's, I guess, right in the world as far as that goes. But no, everything's good, and it's a nice little Sunday, and I'm excited to talk about the game a little bit for sure.
Yeah, Sunday vibes are always good. I got some coffee flowing, a little bit of NFL action going on. Bo Nix caught a touchdown pass in the Broncos game earlier today, so he's tearing it up, and we love to see it. So there's plenty to get into, and we're going to break down our thoughts and get into some of the updates that we learned about kind of during and after the game. I think one of the kind of first thing that comes to mind for me, Justin, that is kind of a broader point, but is worth mentioning. Oregon won by 3 scores, and people still seem to be viewing it, myself to a degree as well, as kind of an ugly win. And I think that there's obviously room for improvement and room for criticism. But we'll get into the third quarter continued struggles that we've seen from this team. But what does it say about Oregon that we are in the year 2024? They're the number one team in the country. They went into Michigan and whooped them, at least on the score, the box score, and they become the first team since 2015 to beat Michigan and Ohio State in the same year, and we're still saying it was an ugly win. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, I guess, just kind of let you know where the expectations are for this team, right? I mean, hopefully they're not too out of form here because, yeah, Oregon is number one. Oregon obviously has a perfect record. We figured that Oregon would end up beating Michigan. That, was kind of the consensus pick there overall, as Oregon should win that game. But, I mean, you should never take these things lightly. Kind of folks are really acting like, Oregon's Alabama. Like, where, Nick Saban's here, they're just going to show up and they roll through everybody like, hey, it's kind of first year of Oregon kind of being in this position. And so, I mean, it's great. And Dan Lanning's doing a great job and Oregon's winning the games. But maybe we need to remember, kind of where this team is. And they won 3 out of the 4 quarters. Again, the third quarter was what it was again. Perfect record. They're winning. But I think it's really important to kind of keep things in check because it's college football and anybody can beat anybody on a given Saturday or Friday or whenever they play.
You never know when somebody has your number that can pop up any week, which is why Dan Lanning has preached all season long that you got to just continue to block out that noise and you keep everything internal. And that's all that really matters. So Oregon did what they had to do to get the win. I think that this speaks to, like you said, the standard of Oregon football. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge how far the program has come, which is just remarkable. And it's so fun to watch. And at this point for me too, Justin, I don't know if you think about this, like, sometimes we really have to grind it out and work a lot. But to me, I'm like looking at it, I get another week to cover the number one team in the country, which I'm really, really grateful for. And it's just fun to watch. It's fun to watch. So let's get into some more of this game and kind of what stood out to us. Dylan Gabriel got my game ball over at ScoopDuck for his performance. And he didn't have a tremendous day statistically necessarily. I mean, it certainly wasn't a bad day. 22 of 34 for 294 yards through the air and 1 touchdown. And then he also carried the ball for 23 yards, I think, and 3 carries and a touchdown. So he did it with his legs as well. But what really impressed me from Gabriel this game, Justin, was how he was able to navigate pressure, whether it was stepping to the side or stepping up in the pocket, throwing on the run. That was one of the parts that really impressed me from Gabriel because it shows you how comfortable he is with this offense and just how he's playing some tremendous football right now.
Yeah, it's decision making, right? I mean, he was making really good decisions. Obviously, not turning the ball over, not throwing interceptions. He did a really good job spreading the ball around. And of course, we got to remember Tez Johnson went out of the game early, right? Tez Johnson didn't play, 80% of that football game. So his
Caught
number
one
one.
pass.
What's that? Caught
He
one
caught
pass,
one
right?
pass
Yeah.
and had that punt return, and then
Yeah, that was
he was
it.
done.
Yeah. So, I mean, for him to lose is arguably his top receiving target, basically at the beginning of the game, and just never really miss a beat, right? I mean, Trayshawn obviously stepped up. Eastu, we know he's a guy that catch that got called back is absolutely, that's criminal that catch didn't stand, but that was ridiculous. Just know, and back to your point, Dylan Gabriel, very effective, has great, I feel like this. I feel like Dylan Gabriel is the same quarterback now that he was when he got to Oregon in April or whatever. And what I think we're seeing is his command of the offense is better. He's more comfortable. Instead of him maybe locking on that first receiver, he's more comfortable scanning around the field, knowing where the guys are supposed to be. Obviously, trusting Kenyon Sadiq more, trusting Patrick Herbert, Holden, all those guys. You're just seeing that comfort. And, I don't know that his field awareness is on the level of Bo Nix, but it's not far behind, right? I mean, Bo Nix would get out there and would change the play, and it was like having Will Stein behind center, and that's what you get with Bo Nix. And I think Dylan Gabriel is not quite at that level, which is not a detriment to him, but I think he's up there and he's getting more comfortable seeing things at the line of scrimmage. What comes to mind is that Trayshawn Holden, that big catch where you could see there was basically a single safety in the center of the field, so Holden kind of runs to him and then cuts out to the flag, and it was an easy catch for a big play there for Trayshawn. So I think Dylan's seeing that kind of stuff, and it's really coming together with the offense.
There's no doubt that he's getting more comfortable, and that's going to be incredibly valuable as the season wears on here, and the Ducks still have some big games on their schedule. I think about that Wisconsin game. Now that you kind of turn the page a little bit, I think that's where you kind of look at Oregon getting its next notable challenge. But you talked about Trayshawn Holden, Justin, and we got to talk about him a little bit more because he had a tremendous game. But to some degree, you wonder, would he have had that same performance if Tez Johnson didn't go down? And I think that he is just really proving himself as a really, really talented weapon in this offense, because he's not just a big body. He's got great burst and great athleticism and great speed for his size. He was the guy that really ultimately had the deep ball going with Gabriel, even though he had 6 receptions on 7 targets and his long was 47. I think he had a 44 and 30 something on yards. I was writing about it last night. It was something like that, but he's proven that he can get behind a secondary. Granted, Michigan was down there starting 2 cornerbacks, and Will Johnson was obviously one of the big ones, but he can get behind a defense and he can show that yards after the catch ability. So I was close to giving Trayshawn Holden my game ball, but I already wrote about him in my takeaways, so I kind of wanted to push myself a little bit. And like we talked about with Gabriel's performance, he just looks really comfortable, and super important for him to be on his A game, because I think that trickles down to the rest of the offense, especially, Justin, when you're playing in front of a crowd of 110,000. I was looking at some of the notes we got sent from the athletic department. 110,576 is the biggest crowd an Oregon football team has ever played in front of, and they didn't flinch at all. And Dylan Gabriel is a big part of that. The other, I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry, go for it.
No, you're right. I mean, obviously, without Tez out there, somebody had to gobble up those catches, right? That's 6, 7, 8 catches, whatever. That's what Tez does in a game. Somebody had to go and get those. And granted, they used Trayshawn differently than they use Tez typically, but he was obviously effective. And I think that was the game within the game. I think Oregon was very methodical going down the field those first couple drives. A lot of the shorter stuff, running the ball, just sustained drives, and was able to get down there and do whatever they wanted. Didn't really take any shots. And I think what you see is, and what happened in that game is that brought Michigan closer to the line of scrimmage. It crept their defense up. And like I pointed out a minute ago, obviously they went to that single safety look, trying to shore up and stop the run and underneath stuff. And that's what allowed Trayshawn, to be able to make those big plays deep, allowed Kenyon Sadiq to get there in the middle, for those 15, 20 yarders that he was able to get as well. And so, yeah, I mean, that's the game with it. And that's something that Dylan Gabriel is obviously seeing when he's out there, because you got to come up to the line of scrimmage. You don't know what the defense is going to call, so if you get up there and you see a stacked box, or you see, soft coverage or whatever it is, you're obviously going to, know what to do with the football. And that's one thing I love about this Wilstein offense. He does a tremendous job of taking what the defense gives you. It's not like, hey, we're just going to run the ball because we're a run team. We're going to run it, and win, lose, or draw, we're going to run it. I mean, they are very balanced, and they're very comfortable being balanced, and they do a great job. Hey, we're going to get down here and figure out what the defense is doing. And, if the short stuff's there, great, we'll take it. And if it's the longer stuff, we'll take those shots as well. So love that. And I think most importantly, I think you saw the reaction from and you're right. I think you're right to pick Dillon Gabriel, but you wouldn't have had to argue very hard for Holden for me either.
Sure.
I think the cool part is after his mistake with Ohio State and obviously getting suspended internally, if you look at the crowd reaction or the team reaction when he's making those catches, he's got his guys high-fiving him. They were excited to see him get back out there and get after it and make those plays. And that just, that's a thing that's a kind of an unspoken thing within a locker room, right? You're seeing a team that's coming together and probably all agreed like, hey, Trey, you messed up and you paid your dues, and now you're back out here making plays, and we love you for it, and we're glad to see it. So those are very galvanizing things within a team to see that.
No doubt. And Dillon Gabriel spoke to that too in the post game when he was just saying, I'm so happy for Trayshawn, and I'm kind of rooting for him, as a player and as a person. So when a guy owns it like that, more or less, I'm paraphrasing here, it's easy to root for him. So he's playing his tail off. I think you also have to give him a tip of the cap to what he's doing blocking. Seeing him in motion these past couple of weeks and pre-snap, and then just throwing his body at the defenders. Not every block is perfect, but I'm sure that Jordan James and Noah Whittington are a lot happier when you have another guy like him, a 6'3", 200+ pound guy, trying to pave the way for you. So I think that was a great performance. I think another note on offense that really stands out to me, Justin, is what the Ducks were able to do on the ground. They ran the ball for 176 yards, 4 scores, 4 touchdowns on the ground, with a long of 23. So not a crazy explosive day running the ball, but 4.8 yards a carry on 37 carries against Michigan, which has arguably the most talented defensive front in the country, with projected first rounders like Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. Josiah Stewart is another touted guy along that line. So that was one of my questions in this game. Not that I didn't know the Oregon offensive line was good, but just this is one of those measuring stick kind of games, or a gauge kind of a game. And they were really able to not miss a beat, at least running the ball. Dillon Gabriel was sacked 3 times, but I wouldn't chalk that up to a poor performance from the offensive line. The other note that we have to get into here, of course, Justin, is Marcus Harper's injury. He goes down with what looked like it might have been some kind of a leg injury late in the game. And then the Ducks brought in Kavika Rogers, the sophomore out of Hawaii, to kind of spell him at guard. And I feel like that it was kind of a hard sample size to really get any kind of an evaluation on, because he's really green. He hasn't played very much. He's young. And to throw him in against Michigan is a tough ask for anybody. So I definitely saw him getting, thrown around a little bit, but I think most people would be in that position under those circumstances. So that I think with Tez's injury, that's not a good one, and we still don't have any extended word there. But I think the Harper injury, if he's supposed to miss any time, I think that could be the more costly of the two for the Ducks. But I know you had a little bit of an update there, Justin.
Yeah, I posted it on ScoopDuck. I mean, I'm not going to get too much into it because we know injuries are taboo with Lanning. And I imagine he'll at least touch on them, I think, in his press conference Monday night. Who knows? He might skirt around it and give you not much of an answer because he's really good at that. But I think it's fair to assume both will miss a couple of weeks. What happens beyond that, I guess we'll see. And, I'm not going to roll too far in the weeds there. But, I think if that's the case, if it's a couple of weeks, I mean, I think you feel pretty good about Oregon against Maryland. You feel pretty good about Oregon against Wisconsin. You do get that bye week in there, which could be like absolutely
really important.
Yeah, it could be pivotal, right? And I mean, Washington's, like I said, Washington's going to come to town. They're a decent football team. They're going to come with basically, nothing to play other than being the spoiler for Oregon. So you're going to get their best shot. Obviously, they were able to beat USC last night, which clearly isn't much of a measuring stick at all anymore. So yeah, I mean, you got those 2 weeks, and you got the third week being a bye, and you'll need to be ready for those guys. So I think maybe really, I think you and I agree, if you can get Harper back for that Washington game, that might they're both great players. Tez a phenomenal player, but that might be where what Oregon really needs more so than anything is getting Harper back earlier than Tez, because I think they can manage at receiver without Tez. That offensive line group's getting, tested, we should say, especially with Matt Bedford being injured basically all season like he has been. Circling back, that defensive line group is better than Ohio State's, in my opinion. It doesn't mean that Michigan's defense is better. I think the defense overall is pretty similar, but I think that front is more physical and more impactful. Like, they're able to get after it more so than Ohio State's. They're definitely more physical. So that was a great test for the offensive line group. Obviously, like you said, Kavika Rogers got put out there and kind of thrust into it. Was probably the noticeable weak link when he was out there, but it's understandable. That's an elite defensive front. And, Oregon was still able to keep going. And so that's a good sign. And, yeah, you just kind of want to see how that goes. But it'll be an interesting couple of weeks, and I think Oregon will be without both. So we'll see how they react to that.
And I can't help but wonder here, Justin, and maybe we'll get some more updates on it this week, just where Matthew Bedford is at in his overall health, because I think he was back in for the UCLA game just for some kneel downs, but I don't believe we've seen him on the field since then. So the injury bug is biting the Ducks on the interior of the O-line. And if you're a Duck fan, you definitely hope that Bedford can slide in there if Harper does miss some time, but we really don't know. Like, I feel like I understand why Rogers went in, because Bedford hasn't seen a lot of live game reps, but it just makes you wonder, where he ultimately is in his recovery.
Well, and Dave Iuli's coming back. Obviously, he wasn't listed on the injury report for the first time, I think, all year. And so, that was probably a really tough game to just throw him in there. And so I think, again, if you start looking, okay, you got Maryland, you got Wisconsin and a bye, getting Iuli kind of into the mix and getting comfortable, because, again, it's not just, we talk about offensive line. It's not just the individual player. It's how they play together. So, maybe Kavika Rogers is a better player, but maybe Dave Iuli gets out there and fits better with the other four guys. And so you don't really know until you kind of get them out there and get the reps in practice and get the reps in a game and see, you're basically testing it out. So if you're Oregon, you're happy that you get to test it out against Maryland and Wisconsin the next couple of weeks. And then hopefully, with everything that's coming up, and hopefully you can get Harper back maybe after that time. Obviously you can get Iuli reps. And ultimately, I just said ultimately like 4 times, but really the big thing is you really can't afford another injury on the offensive line, and you definitely can't afford one of your tackles getting injured. So let's go ahead and knock on that one and hope it doesn't happen, because right now, any injury of that nature, whether it's a week or whatever, could really impact Oregon. So hopefully they can stay healthy there these next couple of weeks. And it's really looking like that bye week is going to be like worth its weight in gold.
Breaking down Oregon's 38-17 win over Michigan. And before we get any further, I want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors here, and that is Ranchito Grill in Springfield. Not sure what your dinner plans are tonight, but head on over to Ranchito at 1537 Mohawk Boulevard. Try the homemade tortillas. They got great food, a great environment, and they will take care of you. Say what's up to my guy Ruben and let him know that Max Torres sent you. Max Torres and Justin Hopkins, ScoopDuck on 3, talking to you guys on a Sunday, a victory Sunday, as Oregon moves to 9-0 on the year. Glad to have you along. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We are on the road to 2,000 subs, and we greatly appreciate your guys' support. Justin, I definitely want to talk some more about the defense, and we can get to that, but I feel like we definitely have to talk about a little bit of the elephant in the room here with Oregon's continued struggles in the third quarter. And to kind of put that into some greater context here, my guy Zach Neal over at DucksWire had a tweet when he kind of grinded the numbers, and he said that Oregon has scored 29 points in the third quarter this year. 5 games the Ducks have not scored, and they have an average margin of victory of 19.5 points. Just a really crazy stat. And I think this was even more interesting because Lanning was asked about the third quarter before at halftime, and it was just kind of a funny interaction. The reporter was like, hey, you said that the third quarter was your Achilles heel. How do you kind of come out firing or, deal with that, improve whatever it was? And then Landon's like, well, I didn't say that, which I doubt he would actually just say that's our Achilles heel. That was probably not what he said. But it's an opportunity. And the Ducks came out again. They got the ball, I think, to start the second half, and they weren't able to do anything with it because they deferred the toss. But again, Ducks only scored 3, I believe, in the third quarter. Only 3. And that was a huge reason why the game felt closer than the box score really showed, because the offense sputtered. And then there were some times when the defense wasn't really able to bail them out because Michigan's offense, as much as it struggled, they were able to move the ball at times. And Colston Lovin was the only guy that Davis Warren could throw to, and they still got it to him.
Yeah, it's crazy that, you look at Oregon and you look at the way they started the game. I don't think they had more than a single third down on the first drive. And that was a 10 or 12 play drive or whatever it was. It was a sustained drive. And they were always ahead of the chains, if you will, first and second down success. And like I said, I think they only had 1 third down on that drive. And then you look at Oregon to finish the first half, and it's a 2-minute drill that they go and successfully get points on before going to halftime. And then they come out dead flat in the third again, which is really, whether Dan wants to admit it or he didn't say it or whatever, he probably said it in one of the pre-production meetings and forgot, which, is technically like off the record, but it's probably something he said because it has been an Achilles heel. Like Oregon has been flat in the third quarter. And, I think, you saw it kind of against Ohio State. Obviously, you see it here against Michigan. If Oregon is going to get caught and slip up somewhere, it's going to be that. Like, you're going to let a team that kind of just hung around in there. Like, that could be, the Washington game, right? Maybe Washington figures out a way to keep it relatively close at half and then comes in the third quarter and kind of chips away at it. Next thing you know, you got a ball game in the fourth quarter. This one felt like a ball game to start the fourth quarter, but then it obviously quickly got away from Michigan as Oregon got going again. So, yeah, I don't know if these guys are going in and taking like a quick nap at halftime and having trouble waking back up. Maybe Lanning needs some smelling salts or something to get these guys fired back up, because they are certainly sleepwalking when they come out into the third quarter from halftime.
It's so strange because the middle 8 was such a strength of this Oregon team last year. And now it's, as an Oregon fan, when you're looking at this, you're nervous when you're kind of in those portions. And I think that they're getting a little bit better at going into the half strong on that part of the middle 8, but they're still consistently sputtering out of the locker room, which is so bizarre to me, because it feels like they're just using too much of their juice in the first half, but then they kind of found it again when they were able to get obviously some important stops and kind of take care of business in the fourth quarter. But I was glad that Jordan James got that touchdown late in the game, because that really, I think, kind of balanced the scales out a little bit more. I was like, hey, this is not a close game. There's no question who the better team on the field is here. The game was never in doubt, but still, I think it's an area that they want to address. And Lanning said as much. He was basically asked in the post game, like, hey, is this a problem? Is it becoming a problem? Like, how do you kind of view this? And he's like, I don't think it's a problem. We won 38-17, but it's an area that we want to address, and we're going to kind of grind the tape and get back to work on it. So I thought that was a great answer. It's clearly something that's going on, a hindrance, if you will, a challenge at the very least. But I don't know. I guess you don't have to use the word problem, but it's an issue. It's something that the Ducks are not the best at right now.
Well, let's face it, Dan, and I'm not picking on Dan Lanning. Obviously, he's doing something right. But, Dan Lanning preaches day in and day out about living up to the standard and executing and finding ways to get better. Well, the third quarter is not being held up to the standard. Like, let's just call it that. I mean, the total game and the output for the entire game held up to the standard. Everything's doing great. I'm not complaining, but let's call a spade a spade. Third quarter is not good, and it hasn't been good, and I don't know why. It's kind of weird. But, again, you go and look at the game, it's 38-17. And then if you actually take it a layer back, Oregon basically gifted Michigan 7 points, giving them the ball on the 30 on a very short field with the punt. Yeah, with the punt they dropped, or that fumbled. And so, I mean, you really start looking at it, and it's like, man, if maybe it's fine if you want to call it 38-10 or 38-13. 38-17 is an ass whooping. 38-10 or 13 is an even bigger ass whooping. So, you got to look at it again. if we're getting nitpicky, yeah, third quarter's not good. It needs to get better. Are you and I picking on the game performance? Absolutely not. Not at all. I mean, Oregon's doing everything right. I think special teams can get a little better. Special teams are just, I don't know. I mean, outside of the two returns, one kick and one punt, and against Boise State, have been fairly marginal or average or whatever you want to call it. I do appreciate the one. It's not talked about enough. I do appreciate the one where Oregon basically, lined up with just the center, and Michigan.
Yeah, that was a great play call.
That was 100% by design, right? You were hoping that they would do that, and their defensive tackle, their nose, whatever, lined up right over center, which is instant. I mean, the line judge was staring at it the whole time, waiting for him to move.
Right there.
As soon as he hiked it, he threw the flag. So I mean, again, you got to credit. That's another one of those like 12 men on the field types of things. That falls under special teams, so I'm going to give Lorig that one. But still, special teams need to be a little better overall. And again, we're nitpicking on a really good team.
I know we got a hard out, Justin, but I have one more note I wanted to get to here just about the defense. I don't know if you remember it, but my prediction was that they were going to hold them under 100 rushing yards. They didn't quite hit that mark, 105 rushing yards for Michigan. But we knew that was their bread and butter, and Oregon really did a great job of slowing that down, stifling them, running the ball, because I think that was the second lowest total on the year, where Texas held them to 80. So Oregon's defensive line played tremendous. A couple of the standouts for me, Jordan Birch came back, and he looked like he wasn't completely 100%, but I think you get him out there and get him comfortable, just working back with some live action. And then one of my other favorite plays was Amari Washington. I can't remember who he hit, but he just leveled a guy. I think it was like an outside run or something, or a screen, and then he bolted down the line of scrimmage, got off his blocker, and just leveled a dude. So Derek Harmon's Derek Harmon. Not much going on in the passing attack. You'd like to see them be able to kind of shut down the go-to guy a little bit better, but I don't think you're mad at all by that defensive performance.
No, if you're on defense, you're obviously it's like a pick your poison, right? Do you want to let Michigan get going with running the football, or do you want to take your chances with them completing passes? They completed more passes than I think they have most of the year. I mean, Alex Orji uncharacteristically threw the ball a little bit more than they typically do with him. And again, that's one of those things when you're facing a team like Oregon, you got to pull out some stops. You got to do some things that are unconventional that you don't normally do. And I credit Sharon more for at least trying it, because you needed to. I mean, Michigan needed a little bit of help, and I think they knew that going into the game. So especially when you see Oregon basically controlling the clock and controlling the ball the way they did to start the game in the first quarter, it was all Oregon, just methodically, other than the punt, the punt that Oregon made a mistake on. So I think overall, things are really good on the defensive side of the ball. I'm still, I don't know. Apparently, we're still trying to figure out this thumbs down thing everybody's doing.
How does no one understand that? It's Jabbar's thing, and everyone else is in on it now.
Yeah, it's a big hot topic. We've got that going on. But Maryland's not had a great year so far. Not really much of a threat, and it's at home for Oregon. Wisconsin just lost to a mid Iowa team. What was it, 42-10 or something? I don't know. They got their ass kicked. So, I was kind of thinking Wisconsin was starting to get a little better, and they really erased that notion on Saturday. So if you're Oregon, now that said, I still think Duck fans need to get out to Camp Randall, need to get to Wisconsin. I've heard it's a killer environment, like college atmosphere. I've heard it's phenomenal. So, Duck fans need to get out there, and it sounds like Duck fans did a fantastic job in Ann Arbor, showing up, being loud. And it's crazy because there's a lot of people like, man, 100,000, and that is not loud at all. Like, it's not. I mean, it's crazy how fortunate we are to go to games at Autzen and hear just people screaming for 4 quarters. Pretty fun. But yeah, it's fun seeing some of these new venues or getting back to old ones. And I think Duck fans need to do their best to get out to Wisconsin.
Shows you that Duck fans just do a little differently, and Autzen is different. One of the very best settings in all of college football, Justin. I think that'll do it for us on our reaction show as Oregon defeats Michigan 38-17 in the Big House. Couple of quick notes here. I think we still have the promo going. You can try us out over at ScoopDuck.com for 7 days for just $1, and that will roll into 50% off an annual membership. No better time, as the Ducks are number 1 in the nation, and we got silly season coming up with recruiting in this 2025 class, coaching carousel, all that good stuff. One last note, I am pushing out the newsletter a little bit more often, so you guys can sign up for the ScoopDuck newsletter. I think it's completely free on the homepage so that you don't miss any of our coverage over at ScoopDuck. But if you want to find more of Justin, you can find him on Twitter/X at jhopkinssd. Find me anywhere at mtorres sports. Subscribe to the ScoopDuck on 3 YouTube channel and share the show. But until next time, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish Podcast.